What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the brand new 5.03 tier list with Chamber receiving huge nerfs. The meta as we know it just might change completely. So we need to break down exactly how far Chamber has fallen, what other characters are going to move, and what you need to know about the new meta. Let's break it down. But the GameLeap website's the best place to pop off dominate with tips, tricks, and guides over every single one of these agents, including VOD reviews that are going to show you exactly what you need to do and the decision making you need to make in every single one of your games to succeed. So do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below. Now, we're starting with the bottom, and we're going to work our way up, and there's no character in the F tier. Right now, we have a C tier, and there are unfortunately two characters. First off, at the bottom is Reyna. Now, we all know that Reyna is really, really good in ranked. She's really, really bad in pro play. She's good in ranked if you are better than every single person in the lobby. She gets a really bad rap, especially when you try to play her in Immortal Plus, because she's a character where if you're not absolutely popping off, you're providing very, very little for your team. And yes, she's a character you can climb with if you're freaking cracked. But if you ever have consistency issues, you're not gonna win. If you aren't performing at your absolute peak, you aren't gonna win. And Reyna's probably never going to be any different than how she is right now, which is primarily a Smurf character or a pub stomper. But the other character in the C tier, quite a bit above Reyna, but I still needed to put him in the C tier because there is a lot of characters in the B tier, and it's Cypher, unfortunately. Now, hear me out. Cypher can still see play on some maps, but one of his best maps, Split, is no longer in the map pool, which is definitely tragic. And two, this character just needs some buffs. He has really needed some buffs for a long time. They nerfed him quite a while ago and power crept everything else. And Cypher has just been left out high and dry, where I think there's a number of ways they could buff this character to make him see more play. And if you're really cracked at Cypher, you can make him work, but he needs some help desperately. So for now, he's at the very top of the C tier until he gets those much needed buffs. Now, the B tier is absolutely stacked, and there's a lot of characters in this tier list, but let's work our way up from the bottom. First off, let's talk about Phoenix. Phoenix is a character that got some buffs and is actually pretty powerful, especially in ranked play where you can get a lot of value out of the fact that you can do many different things. You can AoE a corner, you can wall off half the site, you can flash through and make a play. So there's a lot you can do by yourself and you don't need anyone. In pro play, Phoenix is actually seeing play on specifically Ascent because you can farm orbs really easily and get his ultimate. And he has one of the most powerful ultimates in the game. So being able to farm up these ult orbs and use Phoenix as an entry is really strong. And I think it's something that you should try to be doing in your games, is just farming those orbs. Now, Phoenix's worst aspect, honestly, it's that KO can do a lot of what Phoenix can do, but better. And I know that that's kind of brutal when a duelist is just getting outclassed pound for pound by an initiator, but unfortunately it's true. And in most cases, KO would be far preferred to Phoenix. But it doesn't mean Phoenix is a bad character at all. Next up in the B tier, we do gotta talk about Astra. Astra is seeing quite a bit of pro play here and there. She's really powerful to combo with team's abilities, to hold choke points and sight points. She's slowly creeping up the pick rate for a controller, but she does require a lot of team cohesion, and outside of Immortal Plus, you're really not gonna see her a lot in ranked, and she's a character that is not gonna play very well in ranked unless you're coordinating with your team. So unfortunately, she's down here, even though if we talked about pro play, she would be quite a bit better, but that's just where she is if we're talking about a combination of pro and ranked play. Next up, we gotta talk about Killjoy, another one of the Sentinels that really needs some sort of buff. Killjoy basically only sees play sometimes on Ascent, and outside of that, she doesn't see that much play at all. Unfortunately, due to KO's buff with his freaking Molly that it can go through walls, I mean, it's super unreliable up against a KO to actually play Killjoy. But even regardless of that, Killjoy has just been creeping down the pick rate for quite some time, and she's just being outclassed by way too many characters that she's just in the B tier. Still solid, but not amazing. Next up, we have Skye. And yeah, Skye is all the way down here. I mean, it's pretty fair, but there's just so many powerful freaking characters right now. There's so many powerful initiators in particular that Skye is just sitting a backseat to a lot. We have entered a meta where initiators are some of the most powerful characters in the game for pro play and ranked play. We're seeing teams run 3 initiators in pro play. It's freaking nuts. And because of all the competition, not all of them can be at the very top. And Sky, unfortunately, is down to the B tier. I think there are maps that she thrives a lot. She's really good on Bind, for instance. You can play her really well on Breeze. And if you're coordinating with the team, she can get a lot of value done. But there are just so many good initiators to play. So she's in the B tier for now. Next up, towards the top of the B tier, we have Brimstone. Brimstone's a phenomenal controller, and he almost is as good as Omen. He sees a little bit less pick rate. On some maps, he's preferred. So, for example, Fracture is a Brim preferred map as opposed to Omen. And we'll talk about lurking with Omen and why that's really powerful in the meta in a little bit. But Brim is still fun and still playable. I think he's one of the best controllers to fill to if you're not really comfortable on controller. He's a great controller to fill to because I think he has a low skill floor, which means he's simple to pick up. But all in all, Brim has a place in some maps where he's good, but he is just simply slightly outclassed compared to some of the other controllers. Now, let's talk about the top two in B tier. First off, let's talk about Yoru. Yoru is seeing pro play here and there, and ever since his change, Yoru has become one of the most insane characters in ranked. There are a lot of people that are in the top 500 in Radiant with Yoru, and Yoru has an incredibly high skill ceiling, maybe the highest skill ceiling in the game. He's a demon to play against if you're up against a really good Yoru. Even in pro play, they're trying him, even though we haven't seen like a perfect execution of Yoru yet. But I still think that people are experimenting with Yoru, and I think that players are going to get better and better with them as time goes on. So I would imagine that he keeps climbing the tiers, because I think the kit is powerful enough to see play. It's just the player base has not quite caught up or tapped into the full potential of Yoru yet. Last up at the top of the B tier, we have Neon. Now, Neon's almost in the A tier. After these buffs she's getting, where there's an amplification to her headshot multiplier with her ultimate, Neon could be insane because she's already seen quite a bit of play, especially on maps like freaking Fracture, and she's really, really good with Breach. I think Neon is phenomenal, and in some situations, she can get just a crazy amount of value that no other character can. And with this ultimate change, if you're really skilled with her, you might be able to just pop off and carry a complete game, just one-tapping people with your damn ultimate. Neon is someone to keep an eye on, and I think that she could become a big player in the meta, especially post-chamber nerfs. Now moving on to A tier, these are characters that will have a legitimate place in the meta and are incredibly powerful in the right hands. First off, we have Jett. Jett is a character that did receive slight nerfs in the new patch because now her Blade Storm only does 85% damage into the legs. Not a huge nerf, but still something to keep note of. Overall though, Jett is still in a comfortable place in the meta. She sees play on some maps and on some teams. Literally yesterday, I watched 100 Thieves versus FaZe, and I saw Baby Bay just absolutely roll and smoke everyone with Jett, and it made me want to play Jett. And then I played Jett in my ranked games and bottom front. No, I'm just kidding, but it was it wasn't even close. It was God damn it. But Jett has the capability to really, really dominate in games, and she has a lot of flexibility mid-engagement, so she can initiate and get onto site. She can also smoke off certain pieces of utility and sight lines. She has a flexible economy because she has her ultimate. And she's like similar to Reyna in the fact that if you're really, really good, you can dominate a lobby. But she's much better because you can still do things for your team, even if you're not fragging out. Like, you can still smoke and dash onto site, get space for your team. You could still smoke off a certain sight line and allow your team to take space on the site. Like, there's a lot you can do on Jett, even if you're not fragging out every single second. And then of course, there's always the capability to you fragging out and just taking over an entire game. So there's a lot to love about Jett. She's still really strong, and she's still gonna be one of the best duelists in the game going forward. Next up, we gotta talk about Sage. One of the two Sentinels that are still really strong. Sage is very, very good on some maps and in some teams. I think maps like Icebox, she really shines. And also, it's important to realize that Sage is one of the most picked characters in the game. Regardless of power level, it has always been this way. So you're more likely to play against a Sage than just about every single character outside of like the highest rank. So it's important to realize that a lot of what is a tier list is what you're expected to face against. And you're probably gonna face up against a lot of Sages and play with a lot of Sages in your games. So overall, I think that she's powerful and she's played a lot, so she's in the A tier. Now, also in the A tier, we have Omen. Omen is the best Dome Smoker. Remember that Viper is a line smoker where she smokes in a straight line, and Omen is a dome smoker. Hopefully we get another line smoker before too long as the next character. But Omen is really, really strong, especially when we're seeing a lot of lurking going on with the controller role. We're seeing this a ton in pro play where the controller, aka Omen, will smoke for their team. Maybe they'll use a paranoia, and then they'll lurk and try to make a proactive play as their team is engaging. Or when the enemy team is engaging their team, they try to make a cutoff play on the lurk. They try to make a play, a teleport play, or they just try to flank the enemy team. Omen is a character that can use all of his utility to help his team, and then he can go and try to make a play by himself. And you see, like, one of the biggest mistakes that you see in ranked play is you'll have like your Jet go on a lurk, right? Which your Jet needs to be the one to go entry onto site and help your team get onto site. You can't have your initiator lurking either, because same thing. You need their utility to get onto site, but Omen doesn't need to do that. So he can cut off rotation. He can gather information with sound cues. And you're seeing a lot of this in pro play where you see people like Marv just pop off and dominate with Omen going on these crazy lurks, helping his team first and foremost, and then being able to get even more value, cutting off rotations and gathering more information for the team, or clutching up after the enemy team engaged. He makes a play and then clutches up and stops the defuse. So there's a lot of carry potential from Omen, and in ranked play, this is very, very true. So for now, he is in this A tier as one of the staples. Next off in the A tier, we have Sova. Sova is still really strong. He does have a lot of competition. There's a new character, aka Fade, who is eating up a lot of his pick rate, but that doesn't mean that Sova's not great. And in a lot of situations, we're seeing both Fade and Sova see play together. And I do think that Sova is still phenomenal at taking space. I think with Fade picking up a lot of pick rate, you could probably buff Sova's drone back to where he was before. I think that range is a little bit, undertuned probably, but Sova's still a good enough character to see play. Good ultimate, good darts. There's a lot to love about Sova, and he's still really, really powerful. But at the top of A tier, and probably eking into S tier still, but at least he's not the best character in the freaking game anymore, it's Chamber. Now, this might age poorly, and Chamber might still be the absolute still apex predator of the game, but he was nerfed quite hard and across the board. There were key aspects of him that weren't nerfed, like the pullout time of his headhunter and the ability to fire very fast post shot with his tour de force. But when you nerf him economy wise, increases ultimate, decreases slow timer, and make it so he's more punished for getting his anchor destroyed. He can't play as far away from his anchors, and there's a huge cooldown when you pull your anchors up or you just use the teleport. I mean, there's just so much they hit with him that it has to hurt him. It has to hurt him. Chamber as a whole is just a lot weaker than he was before, but he still does some really powerful things, and he still has access to, a get out of jail free card. At the end of the day, it's still the ability to take a shot, get a kill, and teleport away. He can still do those things. So Chamber is still going to see a lot of play, but teams are going to start wanting to maybe play that Jet instead, try out that Neon, play some more initiators instead. And Chamber is going to have situations where he might not be picked on every single map, and he's falling down the pick rate a little bit, but he's still going to be strong. So for now, we're leaving him at the top of A tier, and he's probably still going to be powerful, but those are a lot of nerfs, and they are going to be felt by every single Chamber main. Next up, we'll talk about the S tier. These are characters that are very, very strong, and they are probably going to be mainstays of the meta for the foreseeable future. First off, Viper. Viper's great. She's a line smoker. She's very specific at what she does. She's necessary for a lot of maps like Icebox. She's necessary for maps like Breeze. And we're seeing pro teams actually experiment with her and Brimstone together in some joint controller compositions. Viper is really, really strong, and she gets a lot of pick rate here because she basically does something that no other controller can replicate. So that just puts her in the S tier because there's going to be certain maps where she's like a must play. Next up, we got to talk about KO. We talked about KO before as a bigger and better version of Phoenix. Most of the time, KO is going to be a hybrid initiator duelist that can get a ridiculous amount of value. You could stop pushes and gather info with your knife. Your ultimate is free sight control. It's ridiculous how strong KO's ultimate is. And his flashes are the best in the game. They are freaking nasty. I mean, being able to walk up to the enemy Viper wall and pop flash through it and make a play with your team is insanely powerful. And KO is one of those characters where he gets better and better as the game goes on. And I think that now that he's entered the S tier, I highly doubt that he's ever going to leave. He's probably just going to keep getting better and better and better. Next up in the S tier, we got to talk about Breach. This is a character that has kind of come out of nowhere as a character that has been picking up more and more pick rate. First, he only saw play on Fracture, and then he saw play on Fracture and Haven, and then teams were trying him out on Bind and Ascent, and now he sees play all over the place. And he's really, really strong. I do think that the one weakness to Breach is that he's far better if you have people to work with you. So I don't think he's the greatest solo queue agent by any means, but if you have a duo partner, or if you're just playing him in ranked and you're communicating and trying to get your team to work with you, he has so many great tools to take angles and to get free kills and for retake with his ultimate. There's a lot to love about Breach, and for these reasons, he's in the S tier. Next up, we do got to talk about Raze. Raze is a really great character, and I think she's priced to get even better after the chamber nerfs. She engages sites really well, takes point presence and site control amazingly. She can clear out cubbies. Her ultimate is a little bit hit or miss, but the rest of her kit is just phenomenal. And I think that Raze is the most unique out of the duelist role, where some duelists can kind of replicate each other. Raze stands alone. And on some maps, she's basically a must pick, especially maps like Icebox. She's really, really great. On Bind, she's really, really great. So for now, Raze is going to be in the S tier. But the best character going into the new meta is a character that keeps picking up pick rate over and over and over again. And I think she's one of the best characters, if not the best character for ranked, and it's Fade. First off, let's talk about Fade from a pro perspective, because she's seeing play everywhere. She's really, really good in the hands of someone that knows what they're doing. You can gather side control, you can clear out angles. Her ultimate is one of the best retake ultimates in the game. There's a lot to really like about Fade, and we're seeing her in a ton of matches in pro play. But let's actually bring it back to ranked play, right? What are some of the things that you die to a lot, you know, just in ranked? You die to people holding an off angle. You die to people holding close-up angles or trying to, you know, play a close range angle. Let's say they're playing Garage on Haven. They're on defense and they either want to hold there or they want to push out and make a flank play or whatever the case may be. Fade can punish so many of these things. Her dogs are unexpectedly one of the most powerful abilities like that we've seen. It's just really efficient at clearing corners, making sure that you flush enemies out, and you can get a ton of free kills with it. And it basically just forces control, right? It forces site control. And I really do think that Fade is going to get better and better over time. So for that reason, I'm putting her at the very top of S tier. But you might not agree with everything we have on this list, but I really want to hear your opinion down below. Which of this list do you agree with and what do you disagree with? And what characters need buffs or nerfs going forward? Definitely let me know how you feel about all of it down below. And the GameLeap website is the best place to get tips, tricks, guides, and everything you need to absolutely pop off and dominate. Do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below.